You might recall last week that I mentioned the 3 Ds. You might not recall them because I only briefly mentioned them, and if you don't remember them, that's okay. The 3 Ds: doubt, discouragement, and despair. We spoke last week about that spiritual work of mercy to give instruction, to help those who are in doubt. Those who are doubtful need some encouragement. I mean, have you ever experienced doubt in your life? Anybody experienced doubt? Anybody? No? Nobody's? Wow, this is a great group. Nobody has ever doubted. I guess there might be 1 or 2 people that have doubted. I've doubted. And I always think about being in doubt and thinking to myself, well, I'm in good company when I doubt. The fellow by the name of Thomas, you've heard of him, we call him Saint Thomas, the doubter, doubting Thomas. I figure if I'm in doubt, I'm in good company. It's okay to doubt. The problem happens when that doubt becomes discouragement and then turns to despair, because that really is a very serious downward spiral that leads only in one place, figuratively, but also literally. That one place, hell. It really does. It leads there. It's like entering into a bottomless pit. Do you know anybody who feels that way? Do you know anybody who has experienced that kind of despair? That life indeed is almost like a bottomless pit? And when you meet people who are like that, or if you've ever experienced that, you might wonder to yourself, is there any way out? Can I get out of this bottomless pit? Those who are in that pit, of course, are people who suffer from afflictions. All kinds of afflictions affect us in our lives, but the real serious ones, like the death of a loved one, terminal illness. The real challenges, especially in difficult relationships, they're the afflictions that we all experience and encounter in our lives. And there is a way out. There really is a way out. And it really is this last spiritual work of mercy that I'd like to share with you today, that is to comfort the afflicted. Look at the gospel and these 10 lepers that approach Jesus. And they make a very direct and simple request. They recognize their condition and they cry out, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." They're crying out because of their affliction. They're afflicted by this horrific disease of leprosy. Now in those days, leprosy could have been any kind of skin disease. You know, if you're like me, you get the itchies and you start scratching, and you know what eventually happens when you keep doing that, right? You know, any kind of condition like that could have been seen as leprosy. So it wasn't merely a physical ailment. It wasn't merely something that was physically afflicting. It could have also been something that was emotionally afflicting, maybe even spiritually afflicting, maybe even socially. You see, that word affliction, it comes from a Latin word that means to cast down or to cast out. And those lepers were indeed cast out. They were outcasts in their own community. When we're afflicted, there's that feeling, that sense of being cast out. You know, we think of that phrase, to be cast down, to be cast down. Suffering, hell. And hell could very easily be an experience that we have right here on this earth, when we feel very much alone and afraid. And it would prompt us to cry out, "Jesus, have pity on us. Have pity on me." But think about it this way, in that crying out, "Have pity on me," what is it that these lepers are looking for besides that healing? What is it that every one of us is looking for in our lives. Everyone wants this. One thing. There's one thing that every one of us wants. What do you want most? How about happiness? Do you want to be happy? No? I don't believe that for a moment. You want to be happy? Okay, at least nod your head if you want to be happy. I'm seeing a few of you not responding and not saying yes and not even nodding your head, so I'm assuming maybe you don't want to be happy. And that might be true, that there might be a few of you that think, I can't be happy, so why even try to seek it out? And the truth is, even though we all want to be happy, because it's something that God puts within us, it's part of who we are created to be. God wants you and me to be happy. He really does. But we resist it. And we resist happiness in our lives because of those things that cause us affliction, cause us to be cast out, cast down. We resist happiness. And I can see it so many times on people's faces when I look at them. And when I say, do you want to be happy? And all I get is, the answer is, no, we don't believe we can be happy. We are beyond a doubt cast down, cast out. But look at what Jesus says to these lepers. Now, remember this. They're coming to Jesus for his pity, for his healing, for happiness from him. And he is the one that can give it to them. But look at how he responds to them. He says to them, and when he saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priests. It never ceases to amaze me how many people avoid contact with the priest. And it could be the best, happiest, prayerful, pious, holy priest in the entire world, or it could be a schmuck like me. Many people, I shouldn't say we, I don't avoid priests. We avoid contact with priests. It amazes me why that is. And I suppose it comes down to, I could never talk to Father. He doesn't really want to hear my troubles. He can't be bothered. He's too busy. Who am I? Who am I to talk to priest? I'm here. He's up here on a pedestal. I can't go talk to him. Or the other way around, what does he know? He's a priest. I'm on a pedestal. He's down there someplace. Right? Of course, the one that really always gets me is he'll yell at me if I go talk to him. He won't listen. And I think about those things that I know people are saying, and because I hear them, and I get them from so-and-so said that you would yell at them if they want to talk to you. It's all in the approach, of course. And what Jesus is asking us, you and I, even to be, is obedient. Obedient. You see, every time this kind of phrase, this idea of go show yourself to the priests comes up, every time it comes up in the scriptures, there's always the sense that when you go to the priest, listen to what he says, and then do what he tells you to do. There's always that sense. Even sometimes Jesus even says, go show yourself to the priest and then follow their instructions. Go back to that work of mercy that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, praying for the living and the dead, and I spoke about it in the context of unity. And one of the things I mentioned, the problem that we often have is we don't listen. We don't listen to one another. It's no wonder that we're in affliction. It's no wonder that we suffer the depths of despair, because indeed we don't listen. And you see, and that leads to the other aspect of this work of mercy, to comfort the afflicted. You know what affliction is, but the first word is to offer comfort. And another origin of the word, I like origins of the word, you know that, and comfort has the same sense of strength, to be strong for another person. And immediately when I read that, the first thing that came to my mind was, the strong silent type. You know the strong silent type, don't you? They're the ones that are the best listeners, aren't they? Oftentimes they are, I think. The strong silent type, the ones who really seek to listen. That's why it's so important to when we give comfort, we listen to one another. Over the last few weeks, I've had different conversations with different people, and I kind of, as I was reflecting on this, chuckling to myself about some of those conversations, because some of them go, where I stand and I listen. I had one just last night after the 4 o'clock mass, and I'm listening to this person. I hear you. I'm listening. I hear you. Now let's turn it around and let me offer you a thought. And after having the conversation, it's always interesting because their response is, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, I guess you're right. And what happens is, having been heard, having been listened to, that affliction is let go. No longer is so bothersome, no longer so painful. That's that doctor-patient thing I was talking about a few weeks ago. Remember the doctor-patient thing I was talking about? Do you remember that? A couple of you remember it. Well, I'll get back to it in a moment and see how well you really do remember it. So, one of the things that we're really trying to do here in the parish, for everyone's benefit, is to provide opportunities to listen so that you can be heard, especially in the midst of all the afflictions in our life. Kristen, at the beginning of Mass, mentioned one of those, the bereavement ministry, especially for those who have experienced the loss of a loved one. And that is an opportunity for the pain and the hurt that you feel over that loss to be expressed, so that you can be heard. You can know that there's someone who will listen to you. There's all other kinds of opportunities, though, for that, especially because that probably is one of the most painful experiences that we experience, but also for those who are suffering from serious illness, life-threatening illnesses. There's that need to be heard, just to be comforted in the midst of that. Later on in November, and pay attention to the announcements, the core announcements I'm sure will be in, because it's not until November, so we'll worry about it later. We'll have a Mass for those who have experienced the loss of a loved one. Here in the parish this past year, we'll have a Monday evening, 7 o'clock Mass, or one of those weeks will be a bereavement Mass, where we'll remember especially those parishioners who have died over the course of the last year. But it's not just for those families who will be invited. It is indeed for everyone to attend. Kristen also mentioned at the beginning of Mass, in the core announcements, the reason why we do those announcements. Well, another reason for those announcements is indeed so that you can get to know not just myself, you see me here most every week, but also so that you can see the staff, especially those staffs who are directly involved in parish ministries. Because we are here for you. There was a day in most parishes, many parishes, where there was more than one priest, usually maybe one other, 2 or 3 priests, sometimes even more than that, working in a parish. And, if you didn't like one priest, you could go to the other. Well, you got me. And, I've been living by the, you can please some of the people some of the time, So that's why I want you to know the staff is here as well. And if you need someone to hear, if you need to be listened to, don't be afraid to approach any one of us in that regard. You see, because that's really what it comes down to. When we put these works of mercy into practice, our relationship with God, well, we find what this is all about. What is it? Oh, this is that doctor-patient thing I was talking about a moment ago. When it comes to our relationship with God, what should we find? Somebody got it. When it comes to what we experience in the church, we ought to find. And when it comes to being intentional disciples, we ought to give to one another. Because indeed we are to be the face of Jesus, who is the face of the Father's mercy. Because when it comes to comforting those who are afflicted, when it comes to living the spiritual and even the corporal works of mercy, we are indeed to be merciful like the Father.